Hey everyone, today we're going to take a look at the thesis and sophistication parts of the rhetorical analysis rubric for the AP exam. Alright, so a few points to address. Before we talk about the thesis and sophistication parts of the rubric, I want to address a few points from the latest FRQ, which was FRQ 7. So first off, some of you went immediately into the thesis statement for your essay without writing a hook sentence. I really want you to look at doing that. Writing a hook sentence pulls the reader in, it gets their attention, it lets them know the direction of the paper. If you just go right into the thesis statement, while that's not necessarily wrong, it doesn't make for good writing. The best analogy that I can think of at the moment would be buying someone a gift for their birthday. If you wrap the gift, put a bow on it, giving them something to unwrap, and then the surprise, that's much nicer than just walking up to them and just handing them the gift that you bought them unwrapped and just ready to go. While both are considered kind because you got them a gift, giving them the gift in wrapping paper or whatever it may be, it shows thoughtfulness. It shows that you went the extra mile to do that. So now, of course, part of that analogy, I said that giving them a surprise, you don't want your thesis to be a surprise. You want to let them know where it's headed, but a hook sentence grabs the reader's attention, and you want that because at any given time, it's safe to ask the question, why would my reader want to read this? Because if you go right into your thesis without a hook statement, if you're not doing those things that make good writing, those things that engage the reader, it's very realistic that your reader could be asking themselves, why am I reading this? So writing a good hook sentence involves writing typically a general statement that's relevant to the theme of your essay, and we'll take a look at some possible hook sentences in the next slide. So possible hook sentences, and these are some for the FRQ 7. I thought of these just off the top of my head, and so while they're not necessarily great, they get the job done. And especially if you're under pressure, having to write an essay in 40 minutes, I think these would get the job done. So first one, while Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech is taught throughout classrooms in America, few are aware of the history behind its creation. You can see where this hook sentence is leading to the thesis I'm going to write, and it is also setting up the passage that I just read. The next one, the world can be divided into two people, those who make history and those who experience it. It's a little cliche, but that's all right. It gets the job done. It may not be the greatest thing ever written, but it stands as a hook sentence. Again, your essay is going to be graded as if it's a rough draft. And if this was part of a rough draft, the teacher may write, well, this is a little cliche, change it, and you could change it later. But for the time being, something like that would work. And then finally, the struggle for civil rights in America should never be forgotten, and keeping a record of even the smallest details keeps that history alive today. That's, again, it lets me know where the rhetorical analysis is going. It alludes to the theme, the big thematic idea, of course, being either the struggle for civil rights, the I Have a Dream speech, whatever you find the theme to be. So let's look at purpose, because while some of you weren't writing hook sentences, some of you haven't been addressing purpose, I would say, deeply enough. So it helps to think of purpose as twofold. There's the immediate purpose of the rhetorical tool, and then the connecting purpose that links it to the overall purpose of the work. So your overall purpose, let's say we've read the document from FRQ 7. The overall purpose is to keep the spirit of the civil rights struggle alive. All right? So now we're reading it, and we see that the author is using imagery. So now comes that twofold purpose. Purpose one is the immediate. Why are they using the imagery? Well, they want to create a vibrant image in the reader's mind. We cannot stop there. We can't stop there because immediately I'm going to say, well, why do they want to do that? Why create a vibrant image in the reader's mind? So purpose one, creating a vibrant image in the reader's mind. And then we have purpose two that's going to connect back to the big purpose, and that is to establish a sense of common ground, or ethos, with the reader, so they, in feeling as if they were not only present but a part of the struggle, continue the tradition of equal rights for all. This is just an example. You have to look at what imagery is doing, again, creating that vibrant image, and then why would I want to create a vibrant image of this historical moment? Why would I want to do that? Well, again, maybe to make them feel like they were there and that now they're a part of it and that they have something to carry with them and a story to share. As long as you're going deeper in purpose. Now, of course, someone can keep asking why, like why? Like, why do you want to establish a sense of common ground? Why do you want them to continue the tradition? But I think if you go two whys into it, the first why being purpose one, and then the second why being purpose two, you've sufficiently commented on it. Again, remember, two pieces of commentary for every piece of evidence, but three is even better. All right, so let's look at some of the APRE rubric. First off is thesis. And, thesis, just like sophistication, is a part of the rubric where you get either a 0 or a 1, and that's it. And so for the thesis, it asks, did your essay have a defensible thesis? Meaning, is there a thesis statement that is required for you to defend it? What is not defensible is just restating the prompt. Any variation of the following phrase, Jones uses rhetoric to achieve his purpose. I saw that a few times. That's not defensible. You can't argue against that. Yeah, he does use rhetoric to achieve his purpose. I'm not trying to argue with you. What I might argue is the rhetoric that's being used, and I could definitely argue his purpose. That's something that you are seeking to defend. And so to restate the prompt and just say he uses rhetoric to achieve his purpose, it's just like saying he uses words and sentences in his writing. As I said a moment ago, what is defensible is identifying a purpose and or tools in the thesis. Now you're put in a position to use evidence to defend that statement. Example, in his writing, Jones seeks to keep the spirit of the civil rights movement alive in the minds of his readers. Now notice I didn't talk about rhetoric. This is a defensible thesis. This would work. This is just fine, even though it's not a closed thesis where I say he uses X, Y, and Z to keep the spirit of the civil rights movement alive in the minds of his readers. I just say that he does that and that he seeks to do it. And then I use the rest of the essay to talk about how he does it. So it doesn't have to be a closed thesis where you address the types and the tools of rhetoric going on. All right, so let's look at the sophistication part of the rubric. Again, just like thesis, this is a 0 or a 1. And the way you earn the sophistication point is by doing one or more of the following. I would say at least one, preferably more. So the first, and I would also say probably the easiest and most important that we'll get to in a moment, is explaining the significance or relevance of the text's purpose within a broader context, going beyond just getting people to want to read your book, as was the case with Clarence Jones. While that purpose in and of itself may fly, it's very self-serving. You have to consider that that's why they give you the date in the prompt. He wrote it in 2011. Why in 2011? What was going on in 2011 that necessitated the writing of this? What was going on in terms of American society? We'll talk about that in a moment. But when you explain the significance of the text's purpose within a broader context, meaning connect it to what's going on in America or possibly the world, but because this is English 3, I would say most likely what's going on in America at the time it was written. You could probably also talk about what would be going on today and why it would be an important passage or text for someone to read today. Number 2 is engaging in concession, rebuttal, and or a refutation of other arguments relating to the thesis. This is typically done for argumentation. If you remember, doing a concession, a counterclaim, a concession, and a rebuttal. If you can find a way to do it on a rhetorical analysis, if you feel confident to do that, if you're reading it and it looks like, on the surface one thing is going on, but something deeper is, you can address that. Say, well, it looks like to the average reader this is happening, but what he's actually doing is this. You can feel free to do that if you wish. Number three, recognizing and accounting for contradictions or complexities within the text. Anything that contradicts or by complexity, with English 4, I tell them for their passage analysis, the word complex is probably going to pop up. And when they're asking for you to analyze a complex perspective or really anything complex, I say look for contrast. Within writing, contrast establishes complexity. And so that's kind of a good thing to keep in mind because it says it right here, accounting for contradictions. And that's what a contrast is. An extreme contrast is what you said before contrasts what you're saying now to an extreme way to where it contradicts it. Number four, making effective rhetorical choices that strengthen the force and impact of the student's argument. So your rhetorical analysis has rhetorical value in and of itself. You're making strong writing choices. You're pulling the reader in. You're making it. You're using good voice. You're using those things that we English teachers like to say make for good writing. You have a little bit of voice. It reads like a conversation. It's not this very sterile, formal piece. I feel more like the writer is trying to have a conversation with you, but not in an informal way, not in a way that where it starts to dive into colloquialisms. You're still using appropriate diction and I would say intelligent word choice, but there's still a conversational nature to it. All right, number five, utilizing a prose style that is especially vivid, persuasive, convincing, or appropriate to the student's argument. I think, again, that goes back to making effective rhetorical choices. I think number four and number five are kind of the same thing if you were to really look at them more closely. Okay, now, like I said earlier, you do not have to do all of those. From what I can tell when I was scoring essays, you really only need one to nail that sophistication point. Use any of those that you feel comfortable with, but I think the best route to take is the first one, that is explaining the significance or relevance of the text purpose within a broader context. And it's easy to devalue the sophistication point, because I know we've been talking about doing a thesis the right way and doing your evidence and commentary the right way, but again, sophistication, it's a 0 or a 1. And do some of these smaller things to get that 1 point to ensure that you pass the exam. Now let's look at the mission of College Board real quick. When I attended APSI, which was the AP Summer Institute that most AP teachers need to take, it's not required that they take it, but it's recommended. We went over the mission of College Board, and the mission is to develop, one of the missions, other than preparing for college and life outside of high school, is to develop students who are informed about the community, country, and world around them. Being informed and participating in one's government is part of being a good citizen. So that's one of their missions, is to create an informed citizenry. So as such, College Board often chooses prompts and passages for the AP exam that are politically, culturally, and or sociologically relevant. They're not just going to find a speech somewhere and go, oh, hey, this is good, let's go with that one. They typically want to pick things that are relevant and really get students thinking. If the FRQ you just took, FRQ 7, were on the exam, you should ask, why did they choose this prompt? What was going on at the time of publication, which was 2011? And then you could even ask, what's going on today that makes this passage relevant? So addressing these questions in your essay is an easy way to earn the sophistication point. So for example, from 2009 to 2012, the Texas State School Board approved changes to textbook requirements written along ideological lines, omitting mention of Jim Crow laws and downplaying segregation. So in a way, it would make sense that College Board would choose a passage like this. Let's pretend that this was the rhetorical analysis prompt. I would completely expect them to put this on a 2011 or a 2012 exam because this, what I just mentioned in Texas, was happening, was going on. And so to choose someone who wrote a book that brings a first-person account to the civil rights struggle, so that that struggle is not forgotten. When you have text people, trying to legislate the exclusion of certain events from textbooks, I think it's a valid connection. If that FRQ was on the exam, that is, I would flat out, I would bet money that that's why they put it on there. So hopefully you see that connection. And so be aware of what's going on around you. To even mention relevant issues and know how the passage connects to them could help you earn the sophistication point. Keep in mind that this is something that you discuss after you've identified the rhetoric and purpose, placing the passage in a larger context, that is, showing how it was relevant when it was published and or why it's relevant now, can appear in your conclusion or at the end at the end of each paragraph. Of course, include these ideas naturally. Don't shoehorn them into the essay. You don't want it to feel awkward. And so, to close, I would not be surprised if you saw a rhetorical analysis that had to do with either social isolation, the importance of being connected to each other, um, something having to do with maybe political divisiveness. Um, I mean, really, I highly anticipate that's going to be relevant to what's going on right now. So keep that in mind. Go for that sophistication point. Connect it after you've analyzed the rhetoric, that big purpose that we're looking at. Connect it to what's going on around you, and that will hopefully do well for you. So, again, as always, if you have any questions, email me, and I will talk to you guys soon.